Ever wondered why your competition always seems so booked while your calendar has gaps? Well, today we're going to show you how to shop your competition strategically, uncover what's working for them so that you can optimize your listing to get more bookings.
Hi, I'm Sarah Karakayan.
And I'm Annette Grant. And together we are
Thanks for visiting.
We've been hosting for well over a decade, welcomed tens of thousands of guests, and earned thousands of 5-star reviews.
Our portfolio continues to bring in over 1.5 million year over year, and supported not only by the industry's leading brands, but also some of the biggest media outlets.
And we're here to help you with your furnished rental.
Shopping your competition is all about understanding your market, being able to spot trends, and then to know what's missing so that you can stand out. So today we're going to cover how to identify who is actually a competitor, because not everyone around you is a competitor, so that's one. 2, how to analyze their listing, what matters, what doesn't, and then 3, what to do with that information. So here's why shopping your competitors is so important. Think about it. What does your potential guest do before they book? They're also shopping your competitors. Sometimes it goes down to the location. Sometimes they search and filter by amenities. Sometimes it's about the size of the home. So that is how we're going to think like our potential guest and figure out who our competition is based on the different filters that they might set to determine who is a candidate for them as well to stay at their short-term rental. Now here's the tricky thing. Once you figure out, okay, these are my competitors, then you have to figure out what actually matters in their listing descriptions, in their photos, in their reviews, all of those things. What actually matters? What can I pull out to then apply to my own listing? Now there's some things that you have to be baseline with your competitors. So if you're in an area where everyone has hot tubs and you don't have a hot tub because you don't think it's worth it, or you don't like hot tubs or what have you, that might be enough to tank your rank even though you have a pickleball court, okay? So you have to make sure you really understand what guests in your marketplace are considering baseline. Like, this is what I absolutely need to have happen in order to command this pricing, and we'll get into pricing as well. So we have to figure out what is baseline. What do we have to have that our competitors also have, but always do it better? But then what are they missing where I can add and stand out? Now, you don't want to add something and it doesn't matter to your potential booker, right? So if that potential booker, they definitely want a hot tub, but they could care less about pickleball courts, then you've just spent a bunch of money on something that doesn't actually move the needle. So we're going to figure out how you can use your competition to really see what the baseline is for the price point you want to get, and then how you can actually stand out where they're missing the mark. Here's our step-by-step process on how to shop competitors. Step 1, we have to identify who our competitors are. Okay, there is software out there that does make this process a little bit easier and can give you a ton of information, but we want this video to be about how you can shop your competitors without necessarily needing to invest in other software. Now, a little TFE pro tip on this software: if you want to get a software that has stats and information about other short-term rentals in your area so that you can figure out, what their occupancy is, what their average daily rates are, what amenities they have, if you subscribe to them, usually a lot of them you can subscribe on a month-to-month basis, meaning, let's say you're going to shop your competition, you're just starting to either shop for a short-term rental, or you've got one where, like we said at the beginning, it's got gaps and you want to see, hey, is there something I'm missing here that all my competition knows about that I don't? You can subscribe to a software that really gives you short-term rental data in depth on a month-to-month basis. So you could get it for 30 days or 60 days and then cancel. So there's a little tip for you, but here's the deal. Don't overcomplicate it. You can use platforms like Airbnb and Vrbo to do this work without subscribing to fancy software. You may not have all the information at your fingertips, but if you want to do a down and dirty search real quick and just get like the basics, the understanding of what your competitors are doing, you can certainly do this by using Airbnb or Vrbo. Okay, now what I want you to do is, if you're a little bit more computer savvy, get a Google Sheet up or an Excel spreadsheet up so you can start taking notes. It's best if this is on your computer. That way, once you find a short-term rental, we're going to call them Airbnbs here. When you find an Airbnb on Airbnb that you consider your competition, competition, you can save that URL in a spreadsheet and start taking notes. If you need to use pen and paper, that can work too, but you'll have to write down the URL so you can go back to it. So I really recommend using Google Sheets or an Excel worksheet, on your computer to help you track what you find, because this is what I feel like people don't do. They get on Airbnb, they click around, they start thinking like, oh, this guy's probably a competition, this gal's probably competition, and then it all kind of blends together and you're not really taking strategic notes. So that's one thing I want you to do when you get onto the platform, when you get onto Airbnb. Also have another tab, that spreadsheet that you can start taking notes in, so we can really conquer facts over feelings here. What is our competition actually doing versus what they're not doing, and keep them straight too. Because here's how you're gonna find your competition. I want you to use the Airbnb filter, and you can filter it by location. So yes, you might live in, I'll just use my own city. You might live in Columbus, Ohio, but you might know that some of your travelers really understand what the university, the Ohio State University, what that area is and where you could stay around that, versus staying in, probably means nothing to you, but like Bexley or like New Albany, right? There's these areas within your city where maybe your traveler doesn't know these neighborhood names, but they do know what's bringing them to the town, what event is huge there. Maybe there's a convention center by you or a sporting place by you, or maybe it's more nature. Are you closer to that national park? And when your potential guest is looking on a map, they're going to want to be as close as possible. So that area on that map, those people that pop up, that's where you start seeing, okay, who your competition is. You can also filter by property size. So if you sleep 16 people, you're not going to necessarily compare yourself to someone who sleeps 2 people or 4 people or 6 or 8 for that matter, okay? So we really want to try to compare as much as we can, apples to apples. When you're filtering by that size, now you can filter it down and see, okay, who's in your area, who's about the same size as you. Now look at price points. So what are they charging? And again, compare apples to apples. So you don't want to compare someone's January to someone else's May. Seasonality there, it could be quite different. So try to stay within the same time frame. I would even try to stay within during the week prices versus weekend prices. You don't have to have comparables for both. I'm just saying that if you pick random dates, let's say Monday to Thursday, to try to figure out what someone's average daily rate is, then you don't want to get your next competitor who is also sleeping 16 people in this area really close to the national park by you, and you're looking at their weekend pricing, because in your area, it might be more expensive to stay somewhere on the weekend than during the weekday. All right, now that you've got this filter going on and you're starting to pinpoint, okay, this person is about the same location, it's about the same size as me, and the average daily rate is similar. Now you want to look at their photos. Okay, and this is just a general look real quick. Who is clearly, not up to snuff, maybe your property is super renovated and this is really dated with a lot of dated dated decor, dated furniture, a dated look. Maybe it's clean, but it's dated versus yours. So try to get a property that looks similar to yours, maybe not in design choice, like your farmhouse and their mid-century modern, that could be okay if the level of updatedness is about the same. All right. The next thing you want to do when shopping your competitors is try to figure out, are they using it as a vacation rental for themselves? Are they using it personally? Or is it available as a short-term rental more often than not? Now, this is where the softwares that you could potentially subscribe to could help you, but you can do this detective work on your own. So if you go into their calendar, you can see too, if they have a bunch of booked out dates, okay, it could be booked by a guest, or it could be saved for their own personal use. And here's my trick on how to figure that out. Go to that potential competitor's reviews. If their reviews are coming in pretty frequently, let's say they've got, 3 to 6 coming in January, 3 to 6 coming in February and March, you can believe that they're probably solely a vacation rental, solely a short-term rental. If you're looking at a competitor and their last review is from a year ago, even 6 months ago, it could be safe to say that they use this personally and they just throw it up on Airbnb if they want to subsidize their vacation rental. Do you know what I mean? So look at their reviews, and if they seem pretty consistent, and if the time between reviews seems to be in line with the average length of stay that someone might stay in your area, consider that person a competitor. If there's a lot of breaks, if there's a lot of inconsistencies in the reviews, then unless everything else is really spot on with yours, I might discard that one as a competitor, because it's kind of hard. They're not shopping the market. They're not available to the market as much as you'd like to be. So you really can't start to see if what they have is actually working or not. So they probably aren't a great great competitor to add to your competitor spreadsheet list. Another TFE pro tip here for you. I did have you start that spreadsheet of all your competitors. Another thing you could do is you could save these competitors to your Airbnb wish list. Okay, there's a little heart on the listing. You could heart it and you could create, a competitors list for yourself. So whatever works for you. I kind of like the spreadsheet better, but if you want to stay solely within Airbnb and do this work and then have a really easy way, I guess, to keep track of your competitors, but even on your spreadsheet, as long as you put in some column the URL link to that Airbnb, you can also keep an eye on your competitors, see if they're making any changes. Are they changing their photos? You might want to put some sort of calendar reminder and maybe you can have it be repeating. So maybe every 4 weeks, you just go back to the same competitor list, see what they're doing. Are the reviews still coming in the same? Whether it's cadence or are people leaving 5-star, 4 stars? Are they missing something? It's just good to have a friendly upkeep or friendly check-in on your competitors and knowing who you're using as your competitor base list. But I wanted to give you that pro tip of using the Airbnb wish list as a way to also track your competitors. All right, number 2, how to analyze your competitors' listings. The first thing to analyze in your competitors' listings are their photos. Are they professional photos? Are they arranged in a certain order that actually caught your eye? Are their first 5 photos, are they giving a full tour of the home? Or are the first 5 photos kind of an afterthought and they're actually showing just all 5 photos of their kitchen or all 5 photos of a bedroom? Are there models in the photos? Are they using influencers in their photos? That's a really big trend that's happening, and maybe that's actually moving the needle for competitors or for short-term rentals in your area. So take note of it. Are your competitors, do they all have kind of moody photos? Do they have light and bright photos? So what I would do on that spreadsheet that I wanted to have you create is create a column where it says photos at the top. So first of all, we have the URL link, right? And then we're going to have, because those are the people that you've decided that you're going to consider your competitor. And the next column is going to be photo, and just take some notes. Go through each and every one. What do you notice? That way, when you go back to your spreadsheet, you can start to see if there's trends or not. But looking at their photos, are they professional? Are they light and bright and moody? Are they using models? How many photos do they have? Do they have 10, 15 photos? Do they have 50, 60 photos? Because we can start to see whether or not people who come and stay in your area and book those short-term rentals, are they more responsive to more photos? Within their photos, what do those photos look like? Whether they're professional photography or not, are the beds beautifully made? Or in the kitchen, is it like the kitchen towels kind of strewn about and it's not really like a tight staged photo session? Really think about, do they open the cabinets in the kitchen, show what's inside the cabinets? Are they really smart with how they showcase the layout of the home? Do they have a floor plan of the home that they've included as a photo? Do they have photos of what's going on in the area? What are some of the landmarks in the area? Maybe they have a photo of, I've seen hosts do this, so they have a photo of a Google map and it shows where the home is and how close within walking distance all the different locations or landmarks are. So really try to see any sort of trend or thing that this competition is doing that you could take note of and make copious notes in that spreadsheet. Next up are descriptions. This is where you get to talk to your potential guest in your listing. So how are your competitors talking to their potential guests? On Airbnb specifically, when you go to a listing and there's 6 lines that you can first read before you press the words show more, those 6 lines, I'm going to call them the above the fold. So back in the day, not even back in the day, even still, on a newspaper, when you see a newspaper laying on a newspaper stand, the newspaper is kind of folded in half. Whatever you can see without having to unfold the paper, you call that above the fold. Okay? Whatever is above the fold, that is what's got to catch that potential booker, right? Because if you're anything like me when I'm shopping for an Airbnb, I am going from Airbnb to Airbnb, trying to keep things straight. Okay, what matters to me? Okay, they've got a low cleaning rating here, but they've got a low value rating here. So I'm all over the place when I'm booking, which means your potential bookers are too. So you got to grab them, right? With those 6 lines. What is your competition doing with those 6 lines? Is it a bunch of I'm going to use the word fluff. You can kind of tell that I don't really like this, where they're like, welcome to this, grand, spacious, blah, 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 6-bed, 8-bath bathroom with pickleball court and 2 hot tubs? Or is it really easy to read exactly how far they are from the nearest landmark? Maybe they actually just list out, they take all those 6 lines and they just list out the top 6 amenities that might bring someone to that property. Take note of what someone who stays in that area matters to them. Maybe they like that more fluffy narrative with those 6 lines where you're really being romanticized about the place. Maybe your potential booker is more like, I need to know the facts, I need to know them fast. So again, on your spreadsheet, put the word description and start taking copious notes. Press that show more link so they can unfurl more about the listing and take note. Is your competition really organizing that information? Is it one big blurb of words? Is it nothing at all? Sometimes hosts like literally say nothing. So just take notes of and really try to get the details. If you're not a very detailed person in outside of this, know that you can't put too much information on this spreadsheet at first. Later on, you can peel things away, maybe even peel away who a competitor is and isn't. But just right now, after you decided who your competitors are, take all the notes you can. Everything matters. Are they using emojis? Are they not using emojis? Do they use all caps? Do they not use all caps? Take notes. All right, now we're going to dig into your competitors' amenities. So go to the amenities section of their listing, and the stuff that's really commonplace, maybe it's a dining table, or right now Airbnb has this filter that's like private living room. It's an interesting filter. I don't know, I guess if you're doing some sort of a boarding house situation, but getting back to it, look at the amenities. What stands out to you? All right, is it just a coffee maker, or do they have like all the coffee options, whether it's drip and Keurig and pour over, right? Like what kind of shampoos and conditioners do they have? Do they just say that they have shampoo and conditioner, or do they actually say the brand name, and is it a good brand name? And then of course we want to get to the big stuff. Do they have a game room? Do they have a pool, hot tub, cold plunge, EV charger? All of the stuff that is really out there, definitely take note of those amenities. So maybe on your spreadsheet where you have the amenity column now, you're going to list out, maybe you go from top being most common, the bottom list of that competitor's amenities to the most rare. That way maybe when you go back in your spreadsheet, you can highlight the more rare amenities and see, is there something that your competition has that you don't have that you could easily add? Or does your competition, like no one else has a hot tub, but you've got a budget to add a hot tub to yours, and so this could be the thing that separates you from your competition. You've got everything that they've got. They seem to have consistent, bookings. Their pricing's about the same as you. So, okay, I've got everything they've got. Now, how can I find the difference? It could be in these amenities that you hear about, whether it's here in our YouTube channel or staying up to date on what's going on in the short-term rental, vacation rental world, where you can add something that they don't have. Now we're going to dig into your competitors' pricing and availability. So here's where, again, those softwares where you could have a subscription for 30, 60 days would be helpful. But again, you don't have to. If you go into the calendar of your competition, again, make sure that everyone that you add to your list, it looks to you as if it's a full-time short-term rental. Now that we know that, so we're just looking at these calendars of competition that they're most likely a full-time short-term rental. Look at their calendar, see, are they using a dynamic pricing tool? How can you tell? Well, is their pricing fluctuating day to day, or Monday through Thursday is at one rate and over the weekends it's another rate? That's one very important thing to take note of, because if they're not utilizing dynamic pricing, that could be without having to buy a hot tub or put in a pickleball court. You just know that you need to invest in a dynamic pricing software so that you're not leaving money on the table. It could be that the software picks up an event that's going on 10 miles away, but it actually does impact your area and your short-term rental. And so they're leaving money on the table because they're setting it and forgetting it, while you have a little art and science where, yes, you're going to stay on top of your pricing, but you're also going to leverage a dynamic pricing software. So look at their pricing, see if you can see if it looks if there's trends and cadences in terms of the numbers they're using, it's very likely they're doing it on their own. Also look and see if there's any trends in terms of when the pricing's going up and when it's fluctuating down. You can get a little information about how far out your competition is getting booked by looking ahead of a month or two, right? Maybe your competition is opening up their calendar for the next 2 years and they have their pricing set and forget. You know what I'm trying to say? Or is it, okay, you can book at your competition for 3 months out, but then they've got it blocked off. It looks like it's blocked off. You can even see like, oh, they do have some bookings. Okay, how long are those bookings? Are people booking for 3 nights, 7 nights, 2 weeks? It might give you some insight. Like if it's consistently, the future bookings look like they're about 2 weeks out or 2 weeks long, then that could tell you something too. Like maybe you can actually have your guests make them stay for longer. Again, you will get more accurate data if you were to use a software for this test, but you can find some basic and general information just by digging into your competition's calendar. have that calendar column on your spreadsheet, and start taking notes. All right, now we're gonna go back to the reviews of your competition, and you're gonna create that column on your spreadsheet that says reviews. And instead of looking for cadence in terms of how often the reviews are coming in, now you're gonna actually look at what these people are saying. And Airbnb is giving us more insight. If you've noticed, if you look at reviews on Airbnb, it'll say like traveled with children, traveled with pets. There's some things that we can start taking notice of there in terms of who is that ideal guest that is coming to the area in which you want to operate a short-term rental. And we want to look at the reviews, and you'll be able to filter on Airbnb from highest rating and also the lowest rating. So you want to look at, yes, like what are the guests who are leaving 5 stars? What are they saying? Are they saying nothing at all, like a couple words? Those might be people who just always leave 5 stars and move on. Or are they leaving, huge, monologues, huge paragraphs of feedback? And if it's good, it's like, oh my gosh, these people are gushing over your competition. Let's dig in and find out what they're saying. And then you're going to filter to lowest ratings, and maybe they have a few 4-star, a few 3 stars. There's always the guest who leaves 4 stars no matter what. And literally, when they write it, they're like, this place was amazing. It was incredible. Couldn't ask for anything more. 4 stars. But maybe there's some 3 stars where people are getting really honest, like, hey, it could have been cleaner, or we had this issue and the host, dragged their feet to help us. Here's a little TFE pro tip. What I like to do is when I'm filtering all the highest, I'll copy all of the highest reviews, and then I'll paste them into ChatGPT, and you can use the free version of ChatGPT to do this. And you'll want to prompt ChatGPT to make you a bullet point list of all the important things to take note of in these 5-star Airbnb reviews that you want to use as things that you want to include in your short-term rental that you are doing market research. And then paste all the reviews. It can be real messy, just paste it all. ChatGPT will respond by pulling out all the things that these guests are gushing about, and you want to make sure that in your column all about reviews, that these are things that you are definitely going to include so that you can at least be as good as your competition in these areas, if not, and here's what you really need to be better. Right? So if guests are gushing about how communicative the guest was, or how spotless or clean with the spa-like bathrooms, these are things to take note of. Then you'll do the same exercise, filter to the lowest rating reviews, copy, paste them in ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, pull out, I'm still doing my research here. I want you to pull out what guests are complaining about at this rental. Make me a bullet point list so that I can see where I can fill in some missing stuff into my marketplace and include the things that they're missing in my Airbnb. And then press enter. ChatGPT will pull out all that information and potentially give you some really great ideas on where you can fill gaps, where guests are complaining or they're saying, I wish it had this, or that, and you can add this to your list of things to potentially add to your listing. All right, moving on to number 3, let's apply what you've learned. All right, now that you have that spreadsheet that's full of information about your competitors, what trends can you spot? Maybe you start using your spreadsheet, using color to organize it. I'll just use some examples here to get your brain kind of moving here, but some of your competition might be family-friendly spots. They use the word friendly a lot. They've got a lot of kiddo stuff, where you're more of a adult getaway retreat or bachelorette pad or bachelor pad or whatever it is. If you're different there, maybe you highlight those competitors as yellow because the person that they're serving is going to care about different things than you. And those competitors who are actually a little bit more like you in terms of who they're serving, maybe they're in green. So what they have and the way they use their listing weighs a little heavier than the yellow does. Maybe there are so many family-friendly spots in your area and you're like, wait a minute, I'm happy to accept families, but also I could go into this marketplace of accommodating more of an adult experience, right? Whether it's a bachelorette parties or getaways with friends. Maybe you're near wineries and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's this whole subset of short-term rentals that is not being served. There's this whole community of people who are not being served as well. What will really tell you if you're right there in your inclination or wrong is that stuff that you pulled out from those reviews. How are guests talking? Do they say in those, maybe when you go back to ChatGPT, maybe you put all the reviews in. I mean, scroll back as far as you can and say, tell me what, if any guests who mention why they came into town. Okay. And so you can start pulling out like what locations, what landmarks do the guests mention in their review that they visited. That's other. They're not even talking about the place they're staying. So that's the kind of sleuthing. That's the kind of detective work that you have to do as a short-term rental owner and operator when you shop your competition. See what you should, maybe all of your competition, they they've got better photos than you do. You've been resting on your laurels. You got your photos done by, Aunt Sue's son who just got a Canon camera and he wants to try it out, right? But all your competition, they've got incredible photos, or they're using influencers or models in their photos, or their description is like so much better than yours. This is where you also have to remove your ego and see if these people are getting booked and they're your competition, and if we're kind of comparing apples to apples here, like their place is pretty darn similar to yours. Take away that ego and say, how can I actually be better? How is my competition doing better than I am? And use it as fuel to level up your own listing. With all that information, once you take, and this should take some time, all right, as you're going through your spreadsheet and you're going through your competition, maybe you're journaling a little bit, taking some notes over here on the side with your hand and just kind of soaking it in. Maybe you take a day off from it or 2 days off, come back to it. What's been like marinating in your brain? And once you decide what your place has that your competition does not, now you want to use that in your listing to grab your potential booker, by the eyes or by their brain and heart with the words that you say or the photos that you use. Highlight why they should stay with you. And now you can speak to that person much more clearly, right? So if no one else has a hot tub except for this one other competitor who's actually doing really well, and all the other ones don't have a hot tub, you're like, hey, I'm gonna get a hot tub too. And actually, I'm gonna really go all in on the fact that I have this thing that only one other guy has in my area. And maybe that's in your title for a while, and in your description, you lead with that. So that's the kind of marketing that you can do to your potential guest. You want to speak to them, grab them, have them stop scrolling somehow. That's our job to figure out. And I'll tell you, it is hard. And the more properties you get, it is harder to do that, but that is our job. That is the work that we have to do. Gone are the days where the demand is so high and there's no one really doing this whole Airbnb thing, all right? These days, demand is still there, everyone. Demand to stay at a short-term rental is still there, but you're right. There are a lot of people trying to do it. So you're gonna have to put in the sweat equity. You're gonna have to put in that work to see how you can really grab that potential guest that you know would be a perfect fit. And how do you talk to them? How do you romance them? How do you get them to stop the scroll, to consider your place, and not just consider it, but to book it? The last thing I'm going to say about what to do with the information is now dig into your pricing. You might have actually more than your competitors have, but maybe your pricing is really overcompensating for how much better your property is. There is a time where the price just won't, you've reached your ceiling. Even with that amenity that you have that separates you from your competition, you might be priced too high. Or maybe you're really not seeing the trends like your competitors are. Or maybe you've been dragging your feet on learning how to use a dynamic pricing software, not using Airbnb smart pricing, right? Because remember, that smart pricing that Airbnb offers for free for you benefits Airbnb and Airbnb only. So I really want you to think about the pricing and the length of stay that you offer, and maybe even look into cancellation policies. Maybe look into the other areas of your competitors' listings and see how that all fits into the pricing strategy that you have for your property. Make sure you actually have a strategy that is rooted in research of your competition and of your marketplace. And I can't stress this enough, if I could tell everyone out there, the one software that you need other than to be on an OTA, an online travel agency like Airbnb or Vrbo, is a third-party dynamic pricing software of anything, especially if you're a new host. Really look into that. I'm telling you, you will make that money back that you pay in that subscription faster than you can blink an eye, and my gosh, does that compound over time. Another TFE pro tip for you. If you already have an existing listing that you are trying to optimize, you've done everything I've told you to do, you have your whole competitor spreadsheet, and that's amazing, really well done. When you go to make a change on your listing, make one change and then measure what happens after you make that change. If you head to your Airbnb account, you go to menu, you go to insights, it's going to take you to a performance dashboard. On this dashboard is where you can track your stats. Now, this is just for Airbnb. So if you are listed on Vrbo, direct bookings, other OTAs, other online travel agencies, these conversion rates that the Airbnb will show you aren't going to really apply to obviously these other platforms, but it is a good indication of how the market is responding to your changes. So if you make too many changes, let's say you make 3 changes to your listing, and you see where you're at, where your booking conversions are at, and you're like, oh my gosh, I actually dipped. Like, it actually made a negative effect, which, you guys, it can happen, and that's normal, but you're not gonna know of those 3 changes you made, what actually negatively impacted your listing. Which is why it's so important to, when you make a change, try to make it just one thing, track how your audience is responding to it, and then make the next decision from there. Doing that is a more controlled way to trial and error your business. I am so excited for you to do this work. I am telling you, not many people do this work, especially in today's short-term rental marketplace and today's the industry the way it is today. So if you do this, you're already going to be so far ahead of everyone else in your marketplace and in keeping up on it. You can't just do it this one time. You really have to understand what potential guests are looking for in your area, in places like yours, so that you can really optimize your listing, optimize their stay, optimize your investment. But I am excited, even you watching this video and considering to do these things, go ahead and make that spreadsheet. Just start with finding one competitor. You don't even have to have a whole list yet. Just get started. Put a repeating task in your calendar to do this competition research, and you're going to be a better business owner, a better short-term rental host because of it. But I am so excited to hopefully help you level up your listing. Now, while you're at it, since you already got your education going, go ahead and check out this incredible video that we did. It is impacting so many of our viewers. The 7 mistakes to stop making when it comes to pricing out your short-term rental. Take notes, because once you get all that competitor work done, you're going to want to know what to do with your pricing and hone in even more. And that video is going to help you do it. But with that, I am Sarah Karakayan, sitting in also for my co-host Annette Grant, and together we are Thanks for visiting.